You check your phone, see a rain icon for the next 7 days, and sigh. Then you grab an umbrella, drive to work in a sealed metal box, and spend the evening inside a house with a roof that hasn't leaked in years. The rain barely touches your life. 50,000 years ago, a week of solid rain wasn't an inconvenience. It was a test, and failing it could mean losing your fire, your food, your shelter, and sometimes your life. For nearly all of human history, there was no such thing as staying dry by choice. There was only staying dry by skill or not staying dry at all. So let's talk about what happened when the sky didn't stop. The first problem was fire. Fire meant warmth, cooked food, protection from predators, and light in the dark. Fire also meant nothing once it got wet. A single heavy rain could snuff out the only flame a group had, and without the ability to strike a new one quickly, that group could be without fire for days. This is why early humans didn't just carry fire, they guarded it, sheltered it, and built their entire camp structure around keeping one ember alive no matter what fell from the sky. Archaeologists have found evidence of hearths tucked deep inside caves and rock overhangs, sometimes dozens of meters from the entrance, far past where you'd expect anyone to bother building a fire. That distance wasn't random, it was insurance. The deeper the fire sat inside stone, the harder it was for weather to reach it. Some groups also learned to keep bundles of dry tinder wrapped in bark or hide, stored high and dry, specifically for the days when nothing outside could catch a spark. The second problem was the ground itself. Rain doesn't just fall, it pools, it floods, it turns soil into mud that swallows footprints and collapses shelters. Early humans figured out something simple but critical: never sleep at the lowest point of the land. Cave floors were often built up with layers of ash, bone, and plant matter, not just for comfort, but to raise the sleeping area above the waterline that crept in during storms. At sites in France and Spain, researchers have found these built-up floors stacked in distinct layers, evidence of the same families returning to the same shelter year after year, rebuilding the ground beneath them each time the rains came. Shelter itself had to survive the water too, not just block it. Early structures made from mammoth bone, found at sites in what is now Ukraine, were built using massive leg bones and tusks as a frame, then likely covered in hide. That hide had to be treated. Groups rubbed animal fat into skins to help repel water, a crude but effective form of waterproofing discovered purely through trial and failure. Get the fat wrong, and the shelter soaked through by morning. Get it right, and a family could sit out a storm that would have otherwise driven them into the open. Then there was the food problem, because a week of rain doesn't just mean discomfort, it means the hunt stops. Tracking animals through mud and rain is nearly impossible. Scent washes away, footprints disappear, and visibility drops. So groups that survived long, wet stretches were the ones who had already prepared for them. This is likely one of the earliest drivers behind food storage. Dried meat, hung and smoked before the rains came. Nuts and seeds, buried in pits lined with bark to keep the worst of the moisture out. Archaeologists have found underground storage pits dating back over 25,000 years, dug specifically into well-drained soil, on slightly elevated ground, positioned exactly where you'd put something you needed to survive a flood. Rain also brought a strange kind of danger that had nothing to do with getting wet. Rivers that were safely crossable one day could become deadly the next. A stream ankle-deep in dry weather could turn into a fast, chest-high current after days of rain, and early humans who didn't respect that shift didn't get a second chance. Oral traditions in many hunter-gatherer societies, some documented well into the modern era, carry consistent warnings passed down through generations. Don't cross moving water after heavy rain. Wait for the color to change. Wait for the sound to change. This wasn't superstition. It was accumulated data, tested the hard way, and passed on so nobody had to test it again. Long rains also meant long stretches of forced closeness, groups packed into caves or shelters with nowhere to go and nothing to hunt. And this, strangely, might be one of the most important side effects of bad weather. Some researchers argue that stretches of enforced downtime, days spent waiting out a storm, gave early humans time for things that had nothing to do with survival directly: tool-making, storytelling, and the earliest forms of art. Some of the oldest known cave paintings, in places like Chauvet and Altamira, sit deep inside shelters that would have offered exactly the kind of dry, defended space a group might retreat to during a stretch of miserable weather. It's entirely possible that boredom, forced by rain, pushed humans towards some of their earliest creative work. Later, as humans settled into permanent villages, the response to rain became architectural instead of improvised. In parts of Neolithic Europe, homes were built with sloped roofs, made of thatch, and steep enough pitches to shed water quickly, rather than let it pool and seep through. Drainage ditches, some of the earliest engineered water management systems we know of, have been found surrounding early farming settlements, dug specifically to divert runoff away from stored grain and living spaces. A flooded storage pit didn't just mean a bad week. It meant a failed harvest, and in a settled community that depended on stored food to survive winter, that could mean starvation months later. By the time you get to early cities, the problem of prolonged rain had become a matter of infrastructure. The city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley built covered drains running beneath its streets more than 4,000 years ago, an astonishing system for moving stormwater and waste away from where people lived. This wasn't decoration. It was survival, formalized into brick and stone, so that no single family had to solve the problem of a flooded home on their own anymore. So here's the picture. A week of rain, something you barely register today, was once a genuine crisis, one that tested fire, shelter, food, and judgment all at once. Humans didn't beat it with one clever trick. They beat it slowly, generation after generation, by raising their floors, guarding their embers, greasing their hides, storing their food a little higher and a little drier than the year before, and passing down every hard lesson a flood had ever taught them. You'll check the weather app tonight, see 7 straight days of rain, and maybe feel a flicker of annoyance. Your ancestors watched the same sky and felt something closer to dread, because for them, the forecast wasn't a mood. It was a test they had to pass, every single time, with nothing but fire, memory, and whatever shelter they had managed to build with their own hands. Subscribe to Yedd channel for more videos.